Welcome to the pre-application information session for the Expanding Sexual Assault Victim Services on Campus pilot solicitation. My name is Maria Cristina Pacheco Alcalá, and I am a grant management specialist. On behalf of the Office on Violence Against Women, also referred as OVW, the Campus and Restorative Practices Unit is convening this pre-application session to go over the fiscal year 2024 solicitation for the Expanding Sexual Assault Victim Services on Campus pilot solicitation. The Campus and Restorative Practices Unit comprises Latinisha Lewis, our Associate Director, Jessica Neal, Kimberly Schamberger, Veronica Murrud, and Yolanda Rivera Quintanilla, Grant Management Specialist, and Essence Deakins, our Grant Administrative Assistant. Our Associate Director, Latinisha Lewis, and Grant Management Specialist, Veronica Murrud, join me today. Together, we will monitor the chat and answer your questions. The purpose of this session is to provide information regarding the Expanding Sexual Assault Victim Services on Campus pilot solicitation. We will highlight a few key points in this presentation. However, it is not the intent nor sufficient time to go over every aspect of the solicitation. All applicants are responsible for reading the FY 2024 Expanding Sexual Assault Victim Services on Campus pilot solicitation and the OVW Solicitation Companion Guide, and ensuring that a complete application is submitted. The campus unit staff cannot provide any feedback to applicants about the quality of an applicant's proposal or provide any information outside of what is presented in the solicitation. However, we will be available throughout the period the solicitation is open to answer any questions about application requirements. Please send questions about the solicitation to the campus email mailbox at ovw.campus@usdoj.gov or call the main line at 202-307-6026. Please include in the subject line Expanding Sexual Assault Victim Services on Campus solicitation. That way, we can ensure that an accurate response is provided to this solicitation. It will be helpful to have the Expanding Sexual Assault Victim Services on Campus pilot solicitation in front of you for a point of reference during this information session. You may take a moment to open it if you don't already have done so. Also, these slides will be posted on OVW's website after the webinar. So please do not feel that you must remember everything we tell you here. You may use the presentation alongside the solicitation and the companion guide as you prepare your application. Next slide. Please note on the solicitation's cover, the final applications are due in JustGrants by 8:59 p.m. Eastern Time on June 6, 2024. The applications are submitted through a two-step process. Step 1 is the submission of the SF-424 and SFLLL in grants.gov no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on June 4, 2024. Step 2 is submitting the full application, including attachments, to the Justice Grants System, or JustGrants, no later than 8:59 p.m. Eastern Time on June 6, 2024. We recommend that applicants submit an optional and non-binding letter of intent to the campus unit email box at obw.campus@usdoj.gov no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on May 17, 2024. Please note that OVW will not accept late applications. Applicants are strongly encouraged to begin submitting their applications 48 hours before the application deadline and to carefully review the OVW policy on late submissions, which can be found on page 23 of the solicitation. OVW anticipates notifying all applicants of funding decisions by October 1st, 2024. Next slide. This program is authorized by the Consolidated Appropriations Act 2023. The Expanding Sexual Assault Victim Services on Campus pilot program, hereafter referred to as Campus Victim Services Pilot, supports institutions of higher education to improve victim services on campus by expanding access to holistic sexual assault services on college campuses and creating a promising practice guide for higher education institutions that wish to expand their sexual assault services and advocacy. Campus sexual assault victim services need to be survivor-centered, comprehensive, culturally relevant, flexible, and accessible for all survivors of sexual assault. Therefore, collaborative relationships between campus and community-based victim service providers are critical to ensure service accessibility. Next slide. The Campus Victim Services Pilot has two purpose areas listed on page 6 of the solicitation. For those new to the OVW grant programs, you may wonder, what is a priority area? Priority area provides general guidelines on how funds are to be used under the grant program, as codified by Congress. Next slide. Under the Consolidated Appropriations Act on 2023, funds under this program must be used for the following purposes. Number one, to expand access to sexual assault services on college campuses by developing a holistic sexual assault service model that could be replicated on other campuses. And number two, to develop a promising practice guide based on the Campus Victim Services model developed for other institutions to replicate or adapt. Next slide. The OVW priority areas can be found on pages 6 and 7 of the solicitation. In FY 2024, OVW has 4 programmatic priorities. The priority identified next applies to this program. Applicants are strongly encouraged to address the priority area, but not required. Applicants who state that they are addressing the priority area and meet the criteria for that priority area will be given special consideration. Next slide. The priority area applicable to this pilot is to advance equity and tribal sovereignty as essential component of ending sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking by improving outreach services civil and criminal justice responses, prevention, and support for survivors from historically marginalized and underserved communities, particularly those facing disproportionate rates or impacts of violence and multiple barriers to services, justice, and safety. To qualify for this priority area, applicants must propose to develop or enhance victim services and support for survivors from historically marginalized or underserved populations. Examples of traditionally marginalized or underserved populations in a campus community include LGBTQ or two-spirited students, immigrant communities, students with disabilities, students with limited English proficiency, international students, first-generation students, military-connected students, neurodiverse students, underserved racial and ethnic populations, and students who are underserved because of religion. Additionally, the applicant must include strategies for serving underserved and historically marginalized students in the Promising Practices Guide. The applicant must also include a culturally specific organization whose primary expertise is working with the identified population. Next slide. OVW does not fund activities that jeopardize victim safety, deter or prevent physical or emotional healing for victims, or allow offenders to avoid responsibility for their actions. Applications that propose any such activities may receive a deduction in points during the review process or may be eliminated from consideration. By statute, OVW recipients and their subrecipients are prohibited from disclosing, revealing, or releasing information personally identifying or individual information collected in connection with services requested, utilized, or denied through recipients and subrecipients programs, regardless of whether the information has been encoded, encrypted, hashed, or otherwise protected. The statute permits disclosure when the victim provides informed, written, and reasonable time-limited consent to the release, or when a statute or a court compels that that information is released. Where there is a statutory or court mandated to release information, recipients and subrecipients must make reasonable attempts to provide notice to victims affected by the disclosure of information. They must also take necessary steps to protect the privacy and safety of the persons affected by the release of the information. The statute permits disclosure when the victim provides informed, written, and reasonably time-limited consent to the release of the information. OVW may support survivor-centered alternative pathways to justice and non-criminal approaches to accountability that fall within the statutory scope of this program and do not compromise victim safety. Information on activities that compromise victim safety and recovery or undermine offender accountability may be found on pages 10 and 11 of the Solicitation Companion Guide. Next slide. Out-of-scope activities. The Campus Victim Services Pilot Solicitation lists specific activities that are outside the program's scope and will not be supported by the program's funding. The solicitations pages 7 and 8 contain a complete list of out-of-scope and unallowable activities. It is important to review this list thoroughly, as applications may receive a point deduction during the review process or be eliminated if proposed activities are considered substantially out of scope. Next slide. The activities listed in these and the following slides are out of the program scope and will not be funded by this program. See also the list of unallowable costs in the funding restrictions section of this solicitation. First, research projects. Funds under this program may not be used to conduct research defined by 28 CFR as a systematic investigation designed to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge. Surveys and focus groups, depending on their design and purpose, may constitute research and therefore be out of scope. However, assessments conducted for internal improvement purposes only may not be considered research as defined above. For information on distinguishing between research and assessment, see the solicitation companion guide. Number 2, activities that focus on sexual harassment issues that do not involve sexual assault. Number 3, products and/or materials that are not specifically focused on the dynamics of sexual assault. Number 4, the purchase of anonymous web-based reporting systems, excluding law enforcement incident report databases or apps for students. Number 5, do-it-yourself sexual assault evidence collection kits. Next slide. Number 6, for projects providing legal assistance, criminal defense of victims charged with crimes is considered out of scope. However, representation in post-conviction release proceedings where the victim's conviction related to or aroused from domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking of the victim is permissible. Number 7, for projects providing legal assistance and representation in tort cases. Number 8, activities focused on prevention efforts and education. For example, bystander intervention, social norms campaigns, presentation on healthy relationships, etc. Number 9, domestic violence, dating violence, or stalking victim services are out of scope unless sexual violence is also a co-occurring crime. Next slide. Training or technical assistance, except for the purposes of sharing the Promising Practices Guide as directed by OVW. Number 11, support for Title IX investigator or coordinator positions and trainings, conferences, activities, or materials focused primarily on Title IX. Number 12, providing training to allied professions in the community. Example, law enforcement, child protection services, prosecution, and other community-based organizations. Next slide. We will now discuss federal award information as it pertains to the Campus Victim Services Pilot to include award period and amount, program requirements, eligibility, and related matters. Next slide. The solicitation provides details on the federal award information beginning on page 9. All awards are subject to the availability of appropriated funds and any modifications or additional requirements that may be imposed by law. There is no guarantee that funds will be available in the future. The Campus Victim Services Pilot is making awards for up to $750,000 for a 36-month project period. Since this is a pilot, all awards will be processed as new and will be made as cooperative agreements. A cooperative agreement is a form of award under which OVW expects to have ongoing substantial involvement in award activities. For this program, the substantial involvement includes participating in project meetings, developing and approving final agendas, reviewing and approving products, curricula, and identifying partners. Recipients must be willing to work closely with OVW on the implementation of their project and be willing to modify project activities at OVW's request. OVW has the discretion to award grants for a greater or lesser amount than requested and to negotiate the scope of work and budget with applicants prior to awarding a grant. Next slide.
Program requirements. Applicants that receive funding under this program will be required to engage in the following activities: participation in OVW-sponsored training and technical assistance, TTA, including working in collaboration with the OVW-designated TTA provider to expand the existing victim services model based on current best practices in the field, and develop a promising practices guide based on the applicant's victim services model. Number 2, collection of and reporting on performance indicators. Forms, instructions, training, and related tools for each OVW program are available on the VAVA Measuring Effectiveness Initiative webpage. Number 3, participation in an assessment or evaluation if OVW conducts one that requires grantee involvement. Number 4, designation of a point of contact to collaborate on the promising practices guide. Number 5, participation in an OVW new grantee orientation. And finally, number 6, collaboration with the OVW designated TTA provider to conduct presentations that promote the promising practices guide and the holistic sexual assault services model. Next slide. Eligible applicants. Pursuant to the Consolidated Appropriations Act 2023, the following entities are eligible for the Campus Victim Services Pilot: institutions of higher education located in the Gulf Coast regions, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida, with an established campus-based sexual assault nurse examiner program, an established campus-based multidisciplinary sexual assault response team, affiliation agreements with acute care hospital-based sexual assault programs, and community-based sexual assault victim service providers, and existing infrastructure to provide evidence and simulation-based training and education to multidisciplinary team members. Next slide. Other eligible participants for the Campus Victim Services Pilot are limited to institutions of higher education with a demonstrated history of providing victim services and advocacy for survivors of sexual assault and strengthening a coordinated community response to prevent and address sexual assault. Next slide. For the Campus Victim Services Pilot, the required partnerships are institutions from the Gulf Coast region must have the following partners in the MOU: acute care hospital-based sexual assault program and community-based sexual assault victim service provider. Other higher education applicants must have a community-based sexual assault victim service provider in their MOU. Next slide. Let's now review the Campus Victim Services Pilot application and submission information. Next slide. Letter of intent. A letter of intent certifies that an applicant is registered and current with the System for Award Management under a unique entity identifier number. The letter of intent for the solicitation is due no later than tomorrow, May 17, 2024, by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This letter is optional and does not obligate the applicant to apply. The letter should be submitted to OVW at ovw.campus@usdoj.gov. Include Campus Victim Services Pilot Solicitation in the subject line. Next slide. Formatting and technical requirements. Please carefully review the formatting and technical requirements on page 12 and 13. Points may be deducted for applications that do not adhere to the formatting and technical requirements. Please read the entire list of requirements. I will go over that list. Double-spaced, charts may be single-spaced. 8.5 by 11-inch pages, 1-inch margins. Please note this change from prior years. The application must be written in Arial font, type no smaller than 11 point, except for footnotes, which may be 9 point. Page numbers, no more than 20 pages for the proposal narrative. Documents in the following formats: Microsoft Word, PDF files, or text documents. And finally, headings and subheadings that correspond to the sections identified throughout the application and submission information section of the solicitation. Next slide. Applications must include all of the following required documents, which will be attached to the application in JEST grants: the proposal abstract, the proposal narrative, which includes the purpose of the proposal, the what will be done, and the who will implement, budget detail worksheet and narrative, and a signed memorandum of understanding, or MOU. If the applicant is proposing to provide legal services as part of the project, then a delivery of legal assistance certification letter is required with the application. The certification letter must be submitted as a separate attachment in JEST grants. A sample delivery of legal assistance certification letter can be found on the OVW website. Next slide. The proposal abstract must be entered into a text box in JEST grants. Though not scored, it will be used throughout the review process. The proposal abstract must provide a short summary of the proposed project, including the names of the applicant and partners, the project title, the purpose of the project, the primary activities for which funds are requested, who will benefit, products and deliverables, and how the applicant will measure progress in completing project goals and objectives. Applicants are strongly encouraged to use the template provider in the solicitation for the abstract. Next slide. The data requested with the application consists of 3 sets of questions: the pre-award risk assessment, the applicant questionnaire, and the summary data sheet. You will complete each as a survey directly in JustGrants. These are not scored, but a required element of your application. A list of questions for each item is included on pages 42 through 48 of the solicitation in the appendices. Next slide. The proposal narrative may not exceed 20 pages, double-spaced. Reviewers will not read beyond this page limit. The proposal narrative must include the purpose of the proposal, the what will be done, and the who will implement. The total point value for the proposal narrative section is 70 points. Applicants must upload the proposal narrative as an attachment in JustGrants. Please ensure each section contains a header and responds to the questions asked in that section of the solicitation. Additional attachments, such as the MOU, will be reviewed and scored separately from the proposal narrative section. Therefore, ensure you answer all the required information for this section. The purpose of the proposal has a total value of 15 points. This section must describe the campus community, including specific populations, available services, how the services are tailored, if applicable, to historically marginalized or underserved populations, challenges survivors may face when seeking services, and information in general that can help reviewers understand the current state of sexual assault victim services for the applicant. Next slide. The what will be done section has a total value of 35 points. The application must provide a clear link between the proposed activities and the needs identified in the purpose of the proposal section above. Do not include any of the activities listed as unallowable or out of scope. This section must describe how victim safety will be prioritized, current reporting protocols, and compliance with federal and applicable state laws, current sexual assault victim services model or models used, how the current services will be expanded, strategies to measure effectiveness, and how victims' voices will be centered in the service provision. The who will implement the proposal section has a total value of 20 points. This section must identify the key staff and partners involved in the proposed project, Describe how the proposed staff and partnerships have the capacity to implement the proposed activities, and describe the roles and responsibilities for all partners. Remember to review the solicitation as it includes more detailed description of what's expected to these sections. Next slide. So let's talk about the budget detail worksheet and narrative. This section is worth 15 points and will be reviewed separately from the proposal narrative. This section must include a budget worksheet and budget narrative that clearly links to the project activities specified in the proposal narrative. The budget must span entire 36-month period and not be divided by year. The budget should include sufficient funds to provide meaningful access or describe in-kind resources available for people with disabilities, the deaf and hard of hearing, or persons with limited English proficiency. The budget should not contain items that are unsupported by the proposal narrative. You should include your budget as an attachment to your application. A sample budget is included as an appendix into the solicitation, and a webinar on creating a budget is available on the OVW website. Next slide. Additionally, the budget must include funds to attend OVW-sponsored training and technical assistance, or TTA, in the amount of $10,000 for applicants located in the 48 contiguous states, and $15,000 for applicants located in the U.S. territories, Hawaii, and Alaska. Next slide. Memorandum of Understanding. Next slide. Applicants are required to submit an MOU, a document containing the terms of the partnership and the allocation of roles and responsibilities between two or more parties. The MOU must be a single document and be signed and dated by the authorized representative of each proposed partner organization and the chief executive officer of the institution. For example, president, chancellor, or provost during the development of the application. The MOU must clearly identify the partners and provide a history of collaboration. It must also describe each partner's roles and responsibilities, how confidentiality will be addressed within the proposed project, what each partner will contribute, and whether they will be compensated. More information on the MOU requirements is available on page 20 of the solicitation. I'm now going to introduce Alanda Thomas, a grant financial analyst of our Grants Financial Management Division.
Good afternoon. In the next couple of slides, we are going to focus on aspects of your application that relate to the documents that our financial team, the Grants Financial Management Division, reviews. More specifically, we'll discuss some items that GFMD has identified from prior years' application that could help with expediting our review. So for today, we're going to highlight certain aspects of the pre-award risk assessment and provide you with a link to a detailed webinar on how to develop the budget that will be included in your application. Next slide. First, we'll highlight the items identified in the summary data sheet, which is completed by all applicants. Specifically, one item that we would like to discuss is the single audit response. OVW requests that all applicants provide a statement as to whether they have expended $750,000 or more in federal funds during their last fiscal year. If they have, then they indicate that and also specify the end date of their last fiscal year. However, GFMD is finding that applicants do not always include all of this information. Please ensure that this question is answered in its entirety on the summary data sheet. Question number 3. Next slide. The next item that we'd like to discuss is the pre-award risk assessment questions, which assists GFMD during their pre-award risk assessment review for all applications. Each applicant must prepare a response to all 11 questions, and each question has multiple parts. We've noticed from prior years that applicants do not always fully answer all parts of the questions, which in turn requires GFMD to reach out to the applicant and which may delay funding decisions. Some of the most common issues that we've encountered have been, for example, question number 2, where the applicant indicates that they do indeed have internal policies, but they don't provide a brief list of topics covered in the policies and procedures. On question number 3, some applicants fail to provide a brief summary of organization's process for tracking expenditures, and more specifically, whether or not it tracks budgeted versus actual expenditures. These are just a few examples, but in general, please make sure that you read each piece of each question and provide a full comprehensive response. Next slide. These next 2 slides will quickly highlight some resources that are available as you're creating the budget to be submitted with your application. Over the last couple of years, GFMD has developed a detailed webinar presentation on how to develop a budget to be submitted with the OVW application. This presentation addresses some of the challenges that you may face with your budget and provides some insight on OVW's budget review process. This webinar can be found at the link on this slide. Next slide. Next up is the uniform guidance, which can be found at 2 CFR 200. Use your favorite search engine for this one. Other resources include the DOJ Financial Guide and solicitation itself. Next slide. We know this can be a lot of information to process, so if you have any questions about the GFMD information discussed, please feel free to contact the GFMD Help Desk at 1-888-514-8556, or, which I believe is the best method, you can email us at ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov. I'm now inviting Veronica Murray to finalize the upcoming slides. If you have any financial questions, you can email us again at ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov.
Next slide, please. Next, let's talk about application deadline. Applications are due by 8:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on June 6, 2024. Remember to carefully review the How to Apply and Submission Dates and Time section, pages 22 to 23 of the solicitation for applicant actions with required deadlines and OVW's policy on late submissions. Consider submitting the application components at least 48 hours before each deadline. Grants.gov or JustGrants as applicable will enable applicants to receive notice of failed submission and provide an opportunity to correct the error before the applicable deadline. Next slide. If you have programmatic questions, please email the campus unit at ovw.campus@usdoj.gov or call 202-856-2188. Include in the subject line, Campus Victim Services Pilot. For financial questions, please email GFMD to ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov or call 1-888-514-8556. For technical questions related to grants.gov applicant support, email support@grants.gov or call 1-800-518-4726. For technical questions related to OVW JustGrants applicant support, please email ovw.justgrantsupport@usdoj.gov or call 866-655-4482. Next slide. Now we will turn to Q&A to answer the questions that were submitted throughout the presentation. Thank you for participating in our pre-app call. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Veronica. This is LaTanisha Lewis. So I'm going to read the questions and then I will turn it over to my colleagues to respond. So the very first question that was asked, I'd love some clarification on the scope of this pilot program. To better understand the purpose areas in terms of populations on campus, should proposals be focused on student populations, or is it within scope to focus on survivors on campus that are faculty and staff as well? To answer this question, you are able to focus on all survivors. So you can focus on faculty and staff as part of this program. The statute doesn't specify students or faculty and staff, so you can focus on any survivor. The next question, are products, materials focused on DV or stalking also out of scope? And the answer is yes, it's out of scope unless it is part of your description as a co-occurring crime. So you would have to, in your materials, would have to talk about the co-occurrence of sexual assault and stalking, or sexual assault in the cases of intimate partner violence. That is the only way you could talk about DV and stalking. All right, I'm on the third question. And the third question has 3 parts. So the first part of the question is, can a community partner that is a subrecipient of the present funding, which is the community partner is a community-based victim services provider. So can that partner provide training to campus law enforcement?
The community partner may provide training, but not with this pilot program funding, because that would be an out-of-scope activity.
Thank you. The second part of this question, can funding be used to support training of campus-based counselors in culture-specific trauma-focused treatment?
No, because the focus of the program, the pilot program, is to provide victim services, not training or capacity building activities.
The third part of this question is, can funds be used to cover medical expenses that are not covered by our state Crime Victims Compensation Commission?
Yes, funds can be used as long as it is to support a victim of sexual assault.
Next question. In the priority area language, it reads where there's language that includes prevention as part of that language. And also prevention is part of the out of scope activities that are listed. Are you able to clarify this area, please?
Absolutely. So remember that these are OVW's office-wide priority areas. So you would take what's applicable to this pilot program, and so you would only focus on response, on services to sexual assault survivors, and you wouldn't be addressing the prevention portion of the priority area.
Another question, does the MOU replace letters of support or collaboration?
No, because for the purposes of the application, those are two different things. And we are only requiring grantees to submit the MOU, not a letter of support.
Next question. If two eligible universities are partnering on an application, does the university where services will be provided need to be the applicant?
No. The applicant would need to be the institution that would implement the program, the services, the development of the promising practices guide.
Next question. If funds are not intended for capacity building, would staff positions be out of scope?
Staff positions would fall under the scope of the grant as long as these are positions that will support the completion of the pilot's requirements.
The next question is, will we be allowed to disseminate results of our internal evaluation or needs assessments in peer-reviewed publications? I'm not sure we determined that yet. I'm not sure we can answer this question just yet. Let us follow up on this last question and we'll get back to you.
All right, I just checked the chat. There are no questions in the chat either. Are there any questions someone would like to pose online or just verbally? There is another question here that just popped up. Could funding be used to purchase same products to equip an exam room? Also, can funding be used to create a sensory room for sexual assault victims to have a calming space?
Yes, funds could be used for those purposes because it is to expand and provide holistic services to sexual assault survivors.
Sarah has a question. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I guess I'm curious, the piece around the MOU and the requirement to have a pretty high level university representative sign off on that. Typically in our university setting, for example, that level of MOU would require like our attorneys and everything to review it. And that would not align with the timeline of grant submission. So I'm wondering if you have recommendations of how we could meet that grant requirement, but within, kind of the realities of what can be made happen in a university setting.
Trying to figure out the best way to answer it. The reason for having your high-level officials sign it is because, one, what you're implementing now or what you're going to put in place will later become a national model, essentially, right? That we will be disseminating to the public. So you're going to want your leadership to sign on to the project that you're going to be doing. And certainly, not having your chief executive may not eliminate you from being eligible, but it certainly will impact you in review for sure. So I would try your best to get that as much as possible.
There is one more question in the Q&A. The solicitation does not mention letters of support. Will those be uploaded as attachment in Just Grants? You will not need to submit letters of support. You will need to submit MOU. Correct?
Yes, that is correct, Veronica.
So no letters of support, only MOU.
I have a
Good
quick
luck.
question.
Okay.
When will the video be available?
I think the video will take about 10 to 14 days, but the presentation should be up as soon as, I want to say, within the next few days.
Is there any way possible to get that presentation emailed?
It will be uploaded in Just Grants. It will be uploaded in Just Grants. We try to move as fast as we can. I mean, today's Thursday, so hopefully maybe Friday or Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Veronica, it will be posted in our website, not in Just Grants.
Any additional questions?
I think that's it. Thank you everyone for joining us.